Hi, good morning, and welcome to my channel. I'm Steve, and this is a presentation on Venezuela and drug trafficking. Is the U.S. losing control over South America? The goals of this presentation and my perspective. The goals of this presentation are to bring this information to light and use it to help us determine if what is currently going on in Venezuela is in America's interest. This is only a brief sketch of information. Of course, I'm biased towards America because I am an American and I stand with and on the right side of my country and Western civilization. At the end of the presentation, I'll ask the question, is the U.S. losing control over South America? The U.S. government and the Cisneros family. In the 1980s, both Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller were connected to and have been seen with Venezuelan bankers who were connected to the cocaine drug trade. One of their closest allies were the powerful Cisneros family, who can be traced back to the kings of Spain and the institution of the Catholic Church. This family has power spanning the whole west coast of all of the Americas, Spain, Cuba, and surrounding islands, and the United States, particularly in Florida. We know that this family seems to have lost a lot of its financial wealth over the last 10 years. Trump, of course, is now in Florida, and Florida used to be a part of the Spanish Empire. To the right, we have a picture of the now deceased Gustavo Cisneros, a billionaire. At one time, his fortune was up to 4 or 5 billion, and now it's around 1 billion, taken over by his children. The Cisneros family. The Cisneros got the book Dope Incorporated banned in Venezuela through their connections. According to Dope Incorporated, they were connected to Fidel Castro in Cuba. The Cisneros were tied to banks in Venezuela, Boston, Switzerland, Canada, Jamaica, and others connected to money laundering and drug trafficking. They were the richest family in South America. They were connected to many of the top government officials and presidents of countries in the Western Hemisphere, which Kissinger, the U.S. government, and the IMF helped to achieve. We don't know the true intentions of this, meaning we don't know what the true intentions of Kissinger, the government, and the IMF was. Colombia and Venezuela's role in drug trafficking. Colombian government officials have laundered drug money and cocaine through Venezuela. Both the Colombian government and the Venezuelan government have or had government officials connected to the drug trade. In the 1980s, Venezuela was a transport area for cocaine trafficking and began to produce and distribute cocaine within the country. This resulted in many addicts in Venezuela and the almost extinction of the native population of the Warawa people, who they used to help them transport cocaine in exchange for food and alcohol. To the right, we have a picture of a Warawa family. Venezuela and drug shipments to Spain. Venezuela is a second-tier country for drugs and corruption by their government, police, and military. Mexico is on this same tier. In contrast, Pakistan and Peru would be on the first tier. Spain is a major hub for transport between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Drug transport. It is also a stopping point for drugs coming from Venezuela meant for Europe. Colombia uses shipping containers carrying food to ship the drugs from Venezuela to the US and Spain. Venezuela would refuse the US request to use its airspace for drug control missions, and the US would avoid implicating other countries' government officials who are involved in the drug trade in order to keep economic allies. Economic and political allies. And on this map behind us, we can see have Venezuela here circled and Spain here in the corner. Mafia families and Europe's involvement. There are other families besides the Cisneros. These are mafia families who come from Italy and Sicily and part of the Cosa Nostra family called the Contreras Corona crime family, and also the Fernandez brothers. Crackdowns of the drug cartels in Colombia, resulting in many of the members to flee to Venezuela. They are involved in manufacturing cocaine and heroin and get the precursors to make the drugs from Europe. Therefore, Europe is sending them the chemicals to make the drugs, and the mafia are sending the final product back to Europe. Trinidad and Tobago Islands and Chinese involvement. To the right, we have a map here that shows Venezuela, its capital Caracas, where the major center of the government involved in Venezuelan drug trafficking. The islands of Trinidad and Tobago just off the coast of Venezuela here. And then the island chain going up towards the United States. Poppy crops are also grown and manufactured into drugs in Venezuela. The islands just off the Venezuela coast of Trinidad and Tobago are stopping points for the transfer of narcotics coming from Venezuela. They are the location of the Tongs Chinese organization, which is very active on the islands and is headed by Chinese businessmen. Asians are also in Trinidad, and shipments of cocaine are exported there. West Africa terrorist groups and the Bolivarian. So here on the map we see Venezuela, and then to the right we see where shipments of cocaine are arriving in West Africa, here in Guinea-Bissau and Mali. Drugs are also being shipped from Venezuela to West Africa to the countries like Mali and Guinea-Bissau. It's suspected that these drugs are being shipped to terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah. The drugs are being shipped from Venezuela to West Africa, then to Europe and Russia. Latin America is being increasingly involved in the drug trade, especially the Bolivarian states. The Bolivarian states include Ecuador, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Peru, Venezuela, Colombia, and Panama. This increase is thought to be due to the goal of establishing socialism and breaking away from U.S. ties by these countries, led by Hugo Chavez at the time. Hugo Chavez is now deceased. The Bolivarian versus the Spanish Empire. Part of the vision of the Bolivarian countries is to recreate the Gran Colombia, which is founded by the Bolivar. The Bolivar were led by Simon Bolivar, a military leader and statesman of Venezuela from 1819 to 1830, who was the president of three of these countries, Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. They fought for the independence from the Spanish Empire, and we can see from the information provided that there must have been conflict between the Cisneros and the Bolivarian and other mafia families fighting for power over the drug trade. China, Iran, and Russia are all supporting the Bolivarian bloc. Therefore, we may think that the United States was probably supporting the Cisneros and the Spanish Empire. Hugo Chavez, the Bolivarian leader, and Walad Makled, the drug kingpin. Here's a picture of Hugo Chavez. The Bolivarian are seeking nuclear weapons. Hugo Chavez, the FARC, who are the Colombian Hugo Chavez and the FARC, who are the Colombian Revolutionary Armed Forces, senior Venezuela government officials, police, and military are all involved in drug trafficking in exchange for a piece of the profits. One of these people was Walad Makled, a Venezuelan who was designated a drug kingpin by the U.S. government, who said he bribed senior Venezuelan officials while he exported 10 tons of cocaine a month into the United States, with 40 Venezuela officials on his payroll. He himself says he has enough evidence to justify an invasion of Venezuela as a criminal state. The Monroe Doctrine. Is the United States losing control over the Western Hemisphere? To the right, we have a picture of Monroe. With all this prior information and the new current events involving the United States government, Trump, Panama, and Venezuela over these past 5 years, I pose the question, is the United States losing its control over South America per the Monroe Doctrine? The doctrine opposes European colonialism and that any foreign intervention in political affairs in the Western Hemisphere is a potential hostile act against the United States. The continued involvement of Spain, Europe, Africa, Russia, Iran, and China poses a threat and hostilities from drug trafficking to the United States, resulting in a loss of power and influence by the United States and neighboring countries, any who are involved receiving these drug shipments, which weakens its people and the country in the southern part of the Western Hemisphere, resulting in the loss of power and influence by the United States in the southern part of the Western Hemisphere, because all of these other countries have their feet in the hemisphere and are profiting and taking money away from the countries in the Western Hemisphere. The U.S. must use its might and act to regain control. The U.S. must use its might to regain control over the Western Hemisphere, expel all foreign adversaries, and put a lid on the drug trade. This is necessary to maintain the power of the United States and to prevent terrorist acts within our own country. We need help from our allies such as Mexico and Canada, along with other allies within the Western Hemisphere. The American people must be made aware of what is going on just south of our border so that they can make a coherent and logical argument for the solution to this problem. The bibliography, we have the Executive Intelligence Review from the book, who wrote the book Dope Incorporated in 1992, and by Alan Labrossi, The World Geopolitics of Drugs in 1998 and 1999, and by Douglas Farah, Transnational Organized Crime, Terrorism, and Criminalized States in Latin America, written from the American War College. Thanks for watching. My name's Stephen Webb Jr. from San Diego, California. Take care and have a great day.